Hey everybody. Well, it's October 6th, Saturday, and on Monday they're going to vote in Brett Kavanaugh into the Supreme Court. Now there's something that I have noticed that nobody else seems to notice at all. It's as plain as the nose on my face. And it's this. Everybody keeps running around saying, oh, Brett Kavanaugh shouldn't be put on there because of his womanizing in his youth and his drinking and his partisanship and his yelling at the hearing and his crying and his whining. Those things are nothing. Those are only basically smoke screens. The real reason the Republican senators are so desperate to get Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court no matter what is because he's going to get them off from all going to prison. So understand this. Here's the story. Everybody knows Donald Trump got help from the Russian government to become president. And now Vladimir Putin and the Russian government, our worst enemy, has partial control over the presidency through Donald Trump. The Mueller report is going to be coming out soon to address that very issue. And I am sure with the 12 of the hottest, meanest, best prosecutors in the United States writing this report, they're going to say something like, that was a traitorous act. You can't ask a foreign government to help you get elected president and then have partial control over your presidency. That's why you don't do that, and that's why it's a traitorous act. I think that's what they're going to say. Now, as everybody knows, if you assist a traitor in his act, in whatever he's doing, you're a traitor as well. So here's the situation. Donald Trump's probably going to be written up as a traitor in the Mueller report, and the Republican leadership of about 9 men at the top, they have assisted Donald Trump in his crime by putting on fake sham investigations into the Russian allegations, the sham investigation in the Senate, the sham investigation in the House of Representatives. So they have knowingly and willingly assisted this guy who's going to be prosecuted as a traitor, making them subject to being prosecuted as traitors as well for assisting him. Whoops! That's a big problem. And they can't stop the Mueller report, but they found an answer how they can keep themselves from being prosecuted, if it comes to that. And it's this. If you put Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court, when the Mueller report is about to come out, you file a lawsuit saying the Mueller report is unconstitutional and so it shouldn't be released. Well, since it's a constitutional question, it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and sure enough, bing, bang, boom, there's Brett Kavanaugh and his cohorts saying, oh, that's right, the Mueller report is illegal. It's unconstitutional because Congress is not allowed to investigate the president. Separation of powers and all that. And that way, Donald Trump will get away with his traitorous crime, and the Republican Party leadership of about 9 men at the top, they'll get away as well. That's why Brett Kavanaugh has to be put on the Supreme Court. No matter what he's done. They don't care. It's not about the drinking. It's not about the womanizing. It's not about him standing in line waiting to rape a drugged out woman. They didn't even investigate that. She said she had 5 witnesses to it. And yet they said, nope, we're not going to investigate it. We're just going to put him on the Supreme Court. And everybody is fixated on that. Me, I'm not, because it's as plain as the nose on my face. I know why they're putting him on the Supreme Court. It's for something far more important to them. They have to put Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court so when they file a lawsuit against the Mueller report, he can deem that it's unconstitutional. That's the only way they're going to get away with their crime. Now, let's have a little perspective here. Benedict Arnold. What did Benedict Arnold do? Well, during the Revolutionary War, George Washington was at Fort Point, and down below were the British, getting ready to do battle. Well, Benedict Arnold went down the hill, talked to the British, and he handed over a hand-sketched map on a piece of paper showing where the entrances were to the fort and where the cannons were placed. When he handed over that piece of paper, that map, Benedict Arnold was a traitor. Now, what's another one? Ethel Rosenberg. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were Russian spies. They were Americans, but they were spying for the Russian government. And when they got a hold of atomic bomb secrets, they were about to hand it over to the Russian spy when they're sitting in their living room, and Ethel Rosenberg says, "These are handwritten notes. They're terribly written. Why don't I type them up for you?" And that's what she did. She translated the handwritten notes into well-written, typewritten notes. And when she handed over those pieces of paper to that spy to take to Russia, she was a traitor at that point. Let's look at someone else. How about the men that assassinated President Lincoln? The men that assassinated President Lincoln stayed at a boarding house. And the boarding house woman who rented them rooms also let them use the parlor downstairs to make up their traitorous act. They planned it down in the parlor. She heard them. She knew what they were going to do, and yet she let them rent her rooms, and she let them make their murderous scheme in her parlor. So what happened to Ethel Rosenberg? Well, they electrocuted her. They executed her for handing over that piece of paper. What did they do to the boarding house woman when Lincoln was assassinated? They executed her as well. They hung her along with the other guys that killed Lincoln. So, wow. So what was their crime? Benedict Arnold handed over a map to the British. Ethel Rosenberg handed over a typewritten paper to the spy. And the boarding house lady let the guys who killed Lincoln use her parlor. Now, let's look at Donald Trump. What has Donald Trump done? Donald Trump has gotten help from a foreign government to become president. And now that he's president, our worst enemy has partial control over the United States presidency through Trump. Gee Louise! That is 100 times worse than what Benedict Arnold did. 100 times worse than the boarding house lady or Ethel Rosenberg did. This is really worse. And they were executed. So what's going to happen to Donald Trump? And what's going to happen to anybody that assisted him in his crime by putting on sham investigations? I'm sure their lawyers have all gotten a hold of him and told him this bad news, that you are really looking at serious repercussions. It's possibly execution, possibly, more than likely, 20 years to life in prison. Wow. We did that? Yeah. I think the Republican leadership, what they did was they were so used to getting their way, so used to having scandals and getting over it. I think they got drunk on power and they said, oh, that's okay, we'll let Russia help Donald Trump become president because the end justifies the means. Well, this means no. This means was getting help from a foreign government to get him elected. That subverts the Constitution. And when they put on a sham investigation to allow him to continue to stay in power, that subverts the Constitution. Whoops! They were not elected to subvert the Constitution. They were elected to do the job for the American people, to lead the country, to do right. They were not elected to subvert the Constitution and let a foreign government get one of our citizens elected. That's pretty close to being treasonous, don't you think? And look what happened to those women. They executed them. So what's going to happen to these guys? Well, they're really up shit creek. The one way they can help themselves out is to stop the Mueller report. But with 12 of the toughest prosecutors in the United States writing the report, there's no way they can stop it. But now they found an answer. they'll stop it from being released when it was done. And like I said before, here's the plan. To save their lives, to save their careers, to save themselves from going to prison for 20 years to life, possibly, quite possibly, they get Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. Once he's on the Supreme Court, and after this next election, which is about 3 weeks away, they then file a lawsuit in federal court saying the Mueller report is unconstitutional. It can't be released to the public, and it can't be used in court. So they take it to the Supreme Court to decide this constitutional issue, and sure enough, there's Brett Kavanaugh and the other guys up there, and they're going to say, we agree, that's right. The Mueller report is illegal, it's unconstitutional, it can't be used in court, and bing bang boom, that's how they're going to get away with their lives. Brett Kavanaugh has to be on the Supreme Court for that to work. So when all this stuff has come up about the women, the molestations, the gross stuff that he did to all those girls, and feeling them up and putting his hand over her face when she tried to scream, and this other allegation that he was standing in line to gang rape this woman, and she has 5 witnesses to that fact, they don't care. All they care about is one thing. It's a much bigger issue, and that is getting themselves off with their lives. Because it's possible they might be executed. I mean, what they did is 100 times worse than what Ethel Rothenberg did. It's 100 times worse than what the boarding house lady did. Letting a foreign government rule our election for president and winning. And now our worst enemy has partial control of the presidency. Holy crap. So that is why Brett Kavanaugh, no matter what, is going to be put on the Supreme Court. No matter that everybody's screaming about all of his past. And the funny thing is, nobody's talking about this. About why is he going to be put on? Why are they doing that? They're just talking about his past and his drunkenness. For me, like I said, it's plain as the nose on my face. Especially because there's something probably other people don't know, and it's this. Not long ago, Brett Kavanaugh wrote a paper as judge, giving his opinion, saying Congress does not have the right to prosecute or investigate the president. They can impeach him, but they can't investigate him. Which is really stupid, because that makes him a king. But nevertheless, he wrote out that paper, and now the Republican Party leadership of about 9 men who went over the top, they went too far. They're now looking at treason unless they can get the Mueller report stopped. And there's Brett Kavanaugh ready to go. And one other thing. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue. This is not a political issue at all. This is about 9 or 10 big, powerful American men that have gone over the line. In the past, they've done whatever they had to do and make a big scandal because the end justifies the means. But they went too far this time. This time, they got a foreign government help Donald Trump become president. That subverts the Constitution. That is a traitorous act. Whoops! And now their lawyers are telling them, boy, you're up shit creek. You really went too far this time. So, the point is, it's about 9 powerful men who did a traitorous act. It's not about Republicans and Democrats. And no matter what they ever say, oh, this is just the Democrats trying to attack us. No. This is about American men that did a traitorous act, and they got to go to court for it. It's got to be looked into. You got to look in and make sure this doesn't happen again. It's not about the Democrats and Republicans fighting. It's about treasonous men who went too far. So that's all I have to say for now. Just keep that in mind when everybody keeps talking about Brett Kavanaugh and what a bad past he had. It's not about his bad past. It's about that they need him on the Supreme Court to get away with their crime and their lives. That's it for tonight.